Billionaire CEO exposed. The incredible reason his new maid sneaked into his office at Maid. Claire stood on the polished marble floor of the opulent office building, clutching her cleaning supplies like lifelines. The glimmering lights overhead felt like mockery as she swept the high-end floors, mulling over her spiraling student loans back home in that small Nebraska town. Everyone expected her to be on the path to prestige, yet here she was, scrubbing away, trapped beneath the burden of her family's expectations. How could she admit that she had settled for this? Every night, as she worked her shift perched among the glitter of New York's elite, the ache of her dreams gnawed at her. Architecture, the one degree for which she poured her heart into every late-night study session, seemed as intangible as the far-off stars. She wiped down another desk, brushing away the aspirations etched into her very being. The memory of her professors encouraging her to reach for the extraordinary felt like a distant echo as she wrestled her self-doubt. But tonight, a shift in the air with hushed tones through the closed doors piqued her curiosity and pricked her conscience. Something was off. She could feel it in her bones. The mundane reality of cleaning became an adrenaline-charged mission to unveil the truth hidden behind the grand facades. She glanced nervously around the empty floor before slipping through the doorway of David Hayes' corner office. As she flicked on the light, stunning leather furniture and expansive views barely registered in her mind. Her focus sharpened on the stacks of documents sprawled across David's desk. The words leapt out at her, revealing a corporate conspiracy that made her stomach churn. Executives scheming to exploit loyal staff like her, boiling down their lives to numbers on a ledger. Claire's heart raced, fragile yet resolute. She recognized the gravity of what she'd uncovered. Before she could reconsider, Claire turned and fled the office, adrenaline propelling her through the polished halls. What was she supposed to do with this information? Pascal, her boss, would always say, "Stay in your lane, kid." But what if the lane led straight into the wreckage of lives? Caught in the turmoil of right and wrong, she leaned against an empty wall, breathing irregularly. A flurry of conflicting thoughts flooded her mind. Should she involve David? The billionaire was worlds apart from her humble existence. What if he dismissed her, seeing only a maid in dirty scrubs? Yet the thought of staying silent felt like betrayal. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The next day, Claire found herself standing inside David's office again, vulnerability etched on her face. She hesitated, her hands sweaty against the rough fabric of her uniform. When David finally looked up, his eyebrows lifted in surprise. She opened her mouth, clinging to her fear and determination, hoping to just find the right words to reveal the world beneath the executive's polished sheen. But the executive's sharks disguised in suits were lurking within the walls. Would David believe her? Would she be considered a mere pawn in a game far above her pay grade? The clock chimed a soft reminder of time slipping by, urgency coursing through her veins as guilt twisted in her gut. She felt invisible, yet all too present, the weight of an entire system pressing down. Could one maid alter the course of the elite's insatiable greed? She found herself drawn deeper into a labyrinth of moral dilemmas, the pull of justice and her personal ambitions clashing violently. With ominous shadows creeping closer, she knew one shocking piece of evidence, a last-ditch revelation swirled within her grasp, threatening to unravel everything. What would she risk for the truth? Would her discovery empower her or plunge her deeper into darkness, compromising everything she ever dreamed of? As midnight approached again, she steeled herself for the decision that loomed ahead. Would she choose to expose the truth, or would she allow the weight of fear to silence her? The answer would echo long after the threshold had burned behind her. With the sun rising over the skyline, Claire steeled herself with an unusual blend of anxiety and resolve. The luxury surrounding her was cold and daunting as she stood in David's office, confronting a man who represented everything she aimed to achieve, yet felt distanced from. The scent of polished wood filled the air, and the oppressive silence felt palpable, each tick of the clock amplifying her heartbeat. I found something," she stammered, her cautious tone contradicting the fervor inside her. David's gaze sharpened, blue eyes focusing intently like a magnifying glass on a single, seemingly inconsequential drop of water. Was that a flicker of curiosity, or merely professional detachment? "Go on." His voice, smooth but commanding, cut through her whirlwind of thoughts. She took a deep breath, resolving to frame her words with caution. This wasn't just about the documents. It was an unearthing of deeper truths, not only regarding the company, but about herself. "The company, your company," she paused, forcing her thoughts to condense into articulate statements. "There are documents in the back office, things about the way employees are treated and how budgets are slashed, people being forced to work longer for less." Her voice began to quaver, the weight of the situation threatening to crush her confidence. "It's not right." David leaned back in his chair, assessingly quiet. Claire's palms were clammy against the gritty surface of her uniform. She felt exposed, like a character in a half-finished play revealing truths that could change the entire narrative. How could she make him see the stakes without losing her nerve? Each second stretched, demanding her fortitude. "Why would you bring this to me?" David asked, his tone bordering on incredulous, skepticism lacing his words. "What's in it for you?" The question burned. It hung in the air, captivating yet contemptuous. Claire felt her past cascade over her like a relentless tide, one that sought to drown her aspirations. "Because it's wrong," she blurted, shifting from doubt to fierce conviction. "People deserve better than to be mere numbers. I may be the maid, David, but I've watched and listened." David's silence loomed like an impending storm. Would he dismiss her insight as irrelevant? Or would he find value in her raw perspective? Her body trembled, fueled by fear and an emerging flame of determination. Was she merely being naive? Or was this the first step toward reclaiming the narrative of her life? He leaned forward, fingers interlaced, brows knitted in thought. "You understand the risks, don't you? Exposing this could lose you your job, your livelihood." Every nerve in her body screamed revolt against the injustice of not only the situation at hand, but also the architecture of her own life. "I know, but staying silent would be worse. This isn't just about me. A person should matter more than profit margins." Suddenly, the door swung open, shattering the moment. Pascal stormed in, his presence a stifling weight, his eyes flitting from Claire to David, suspicion written in every crease of his brow. The atmosphere shifted, tension crackling like electricity. Before she could gather her thoughts, Pascal spoke. "What's going on here?" The intrusion felt like a collision of fate and opportunity. Claire's instincts kicked into gear. She could either retreat into the shadows again or seize this moment to assert herself. As her heart thundered in her chest, she realized that she teetered on a precipice. She could expose not just corporate malfeasance, but also reveal the depth of who she had been, refusing to become an agent of change, armed with knowledge and defiance. "Pascal, I was just..." Claire's mind raced. Would her voice falter again, or rise to meet the challenge? "Enough. This isn't a circus." Pascal's interrupting glare tore through her resolve. His disdain mocked her aspirations, yet Claire felt an unfamiliar clarity emerge. Perhaps this confrontation was what she needed. Her transformation into the architect of her own story had already begun. As she searched for words, she felt the walls closing in, and a decision formed within her. The path before her held unimaginable uncertainties, but she had come too far to back down now. And with every ounce of newfound courage, she prepared to face not only David's judgment, but also the truth swirling in her own heart, determined to shift the tides of both her life and the lives of others. "Let me be clear," she declared, her voice steady despite the panic racing inside her. "People deserve better than this. It's time to make a change." David's brow furrowed as Pascal's mouth curled into a sardonic smile. Little did she know, this pivotal moment would send ripples far beyond the walls of the high-rise, intertwining her fate with forces she had yet to comprehend. Would David's choice side with power or justice? Claire felt the ground beneath her shift, realizing that once this door opened, there would be no closing it again. The air thickened with anticipation, like the moment before a storm. Claire's heart raced, each beat echoing her determination to hold her ground. David's jaw tightened, his expression a mask of steel as he processed her words. The silence that enveloped them was both a razor's edge and a refuge. She felt suspended in time, knowing a single misstep could unravel everything she had fought to establish. Claire, David's voice was steady, though it bore no promise of support. You're making grave accusations. Do you realize what you're risking? She could sense his effort to maintain composure, but the underlying tension was unmistakable. Yes, she replied, her voice stronger than she felt. But someone has to. Pascal's demeanor shifted as he absorbed the scene. Skepticism lingered in his eyes, a predator assessing its prey. You think your perspective can change anything here? His disdainful tone sliced through the air, forcing Claire to confront the shadows of her past, all the times she had felt powerless, ignored, and unseen. I believe it must. Her words were a small ember of faith ignited by sheer necessity. It's not about me, it's about truth. If this company wants to thrive, it needs to start treating every employee like a human being. She could feel the weight of their gazes pinning her down, yet the fire within refused to flicker out. David leaned back, folding his arms as if contemplating the practicality of her claims. A noble sentiment, but this isn't a charity. Business is about profit, Claire. You'll find that hard choices often come at a cost. That's precisely what's wrong, she shot back, emboldened by a sudden rush of clarity. The obsession with profit has stripped the soul from this company. People are not expendable resources. The tension twisted in her gut. It was a gamble against corporate machinery, but Claire felt the steely determination hardening her resolve. David's expression was inscrutable, but she detected the faintest crease of intrigue break the surface. Pascal scoffed, his voice dripping with mockery. A maid calling for change? How quaint. You really think you can waltz in here and transform a billion-dollar empire with your righteous indignation? A flutter of doubt brushed against Claire's mind, a whisper of her former self that had longed for acceptance and validation. It was time to confront that voice. No, she said firmly, I don't expect any miracles from me alone. But I know that I can start a conversation. The finality of her statement hung in the air, like a dare thrown into the lion's den. David straightened in his chair, eyes narrowing thoughtfully. Her conviction was unexpected. She could see gears turning in his mind. Perhaps there was a sliver of possibility. And if I were to entertain this conversation, what would you propose? Transparency, Claire said, heart racing. Develop a program, engage the employees, listen to their needs. It could restore faith in this place. As each word spilled out, she felt her old self recede, leaving only this resolve, a woman ready to lead rather than follow. The anticipation arc shifted within the room, and she sensed an internal shift in David, even if it was merely a crack in his facade. Considering you're a maid, Pascal interjected with derision, I doubt you'll ever be in a position to implement anything but dusting. His condescending tone struck a nerve, but Claire digested it. She would not break under his scrutiny. In that flash of judgment, something clicked within her. Humility met audacity. I may be a maid now, but that doesn't define my capabilities. Just as it doesn't define others. David's practical demeanor faltered, if only for a moment. Claire seized the shift. Everyone in this company has a voice, and they should be heard, from the executive suite to the janitor's closet. The statement echoed through the office like a clarion call. As the weight of her declaration settled, she realized how her perception had transformed, how clarity and purpose fused into an urgency to act. Everything she had endured, every snub, every injustice had led her. Here, willing to challenge the highest seat of power, David turned his gaze to Pascal, who shifted uncomfortably under the sudden intensity. And what do you think, Pascal? Is this worth exploring? The moment teetered precariously on the brink of decisions that could alter destinies. David's, Claire's, and even Pascal's. The air hummed with the unsaid words, and Claire braced for the fallout. She couldn't tell what future awaited her, but sensed it would be irrevocable. Consider it a starting point, at least, David finally replied, his voice firm but shaded with uncertainty. Perhaps, Claire mused, the tide was finally changing. But as the three remained poised in that room, Claire's heart sank with the realization that each ally could also become her adversary. Would David genuinely listen, or was it simply a ploy for further manipulation? The uncertainty loomed dark, leaving her grasping for control in a world determined to resist change. As the silence stretched again, she felt the unmistakable weight of choices yet to be made, each one a step deeper into an unpredictable narrative that could veer dangerously off course. And looming ahead was a confrontation with truths she was still unprepared to face within the company and within herself. What more would she have to uncover about her own strengths before this journey reached its conclusion? The moment hung thick, suspended in the air like an unspoken agreement. Claire could feel the weight of their expectations pressing against her, pushing her to solidify a plan. David's curiosity felt like a tightrope she had to walk, every step requiring balance and precision. She finally had a small foothold in the powerful corporate structure, fragile territory, but territory nonetheless. David leaned forward, his fingers steepled. Claire could sense the skepticism simmering beneath his polished exterior. Transparency, you say? But how do we know that this isn't just an emotional plea? You'll need something tangible if you truly want to drive change. The challenge crackled in the air, igniting a spark deep within Claire. I've been thinking about it, she began, willing her voice to stay steady despite the cascade of adrenaline rushing through her. We can implement regular feedback meetings, anonymous surveys to gauge employee morale surveys. Pascal interrupted with a mocking tone, the scent of disdain hanging on his words. Are you suggesting we use employee opinions like a mood board? That's as laughable as your title. Actually, it's critical, Claire countered, fighting to keep her composure intact. Her heart raced, but she could feel a sense of clarity formulating with each passing second. Understanding employees, what drives them, what challenges they face, will only enhance productivity. This isn't frivolous, it's strategic. David's brow furrowed as he absorbed each word. You're not merely calling for change. You're proposing a fundamental shift in how we conduct business. Yes, Claire replied, a conviction tightening around her voice. It's time to treat employees as stakeholders, not just cogs in the machine. The air thickened once more, and Claire could sense the wave of recognition wash over David. For a brief moment, his steely demeanor faltered, revealing a flicker of contemplation. Yet, as quickly as it appeared, the old facade returned. Let us suppose I take this seriously, he said, leaning back slightly. What happens when the shareholders balk at the notion of investing resources into an employee-centric approach? Her pulse quickened, spurred by the test of her ingenuity. Awareness of their workers' satisfaction actually drives profit, studies have shown it. Happy employees lead to lower turnover rates and increased productivity. If we want to attract top talent and maintain our market share, this is the way forward. Pascal rolled his eyes, feigning an exasperation that felt tailored. This isn't a college lecture, Claire. You're expecting us to break decades of tradition on the whim of some employee satisfaction studies? Unyieldingly, she pursued her ground. Tradition doesn't guarantee success. Look around. Companies that thrive today are those who adapt. If we disregard our employees' needs, we risk breeding resentment and creating a toxic environment. This could foster a rebellion from within. The reality of her point resounded louder than before, and Claire could sense it registering in David's micro-expressions. The tension was transforming into something else, a cautious curiosity, an eagerness to unravel the years of neglect buried under structured hierarchy. You may have a point, David conceded slowly, scanning Claire's face as if searching for signs of desperation. But you need to come prepared with a comprehensive plan. Faculty involvement will be essential, and I'll need specifics to present to the board. Of course, Claire replied, each word flowing from a newfound reservoir of confidence. But I'll need time, and something more than lip service. Your authority to push this forward. I can't do this alone. With that, David was now faced with a choice, a hesitation as he weighed the risks against potential rewards. Her vulnerability collided boldly with her ambition, challenging the traditional hierarchical limitations that had constrained her for years. Very well, he finally stated, a slow nod punctuating his resolve. Let us see the plan, and we'll take it from there. Her heart soared, alighting with adrenaline. Just like that, she had crossed an invisible threshold from mere maid to potential change agent, all while risking ridicule. Yet, she was left at the edge of new uncertainties. Would David truly honor this commitment? Would Pascal outright oppose her? Or would he simmer in silence, biding his time to strike? As her mind filled with ideas, fears, and plans bubbling to the surface, Claire felt refreshed and terrified by what lay ahead. The contours of her identity were shifting yet again. However, this time, she embraced it. An urgency flickered within her. Preparation was key. She needed to build a case that would resonate not just with David and Pascal, but with the board, the shareholders, and eventually the employees who relied on the results. With every step she prepared to take toward this greater purpose, Claire realized she stood at the crossroads of transformation not just for the company, but for herself. That as she left the room, his final words echoed in her mind, a promise, but a fragile one. She felt the looming wave of pressure, a test of her resolve. And then, the shadows of her past flitted once more in the corners of her mind, whispering doubts she had thought extinguished. What hidden fears lay in wait, ready to ensnare her progress? In the depths of that uncertainty, Claire knew a reckoning was approaching. The time had come to face both external and internal demons. Would she rise to the occasion, or would she falter beneath the expectations she had set in motion? Claire paced the corridor, her mind racing with potential outlines and strategies. Time was crucial, but so was clarity of purpose. The moment David had nodded in agreement felt like a seismic shift, yet it could just as easily collapse into a chasm of failure if she didn't act decisively. Each step resonated with a thud of determination as thoughts bounced around her mind. What did a comprehensive plan even look like? Perhaps a roadmap that outlined specific initiatives, a timeline for implementation, and measurable outcomes to report back to David. She needed to engage other departments and highlight their contributions to this shift. Each facet of her plan would have to reflect a tangible commitment to change to assuage shareholder fears. But in the midst of her planning, doubt crept in. What if this effort exposed her inadequacies rather than elevate her? There were whispers of her inexperience, murmurs in break rooms, the frail trust lingering in the back of her mind like a ghost threatening to reappear at the worst moment. Could she withstand the scrutiny and vitriol that could follow if her efforts fell flat? Stepping into one of the glass-walled meeting rooms, she chose a table covered in whiteboards and markers. As she sat down, she began drafting her ideas, scribbling her thoughts with an urgency that felt electric. Focus on collaboration, she muttered, envisioning team brainstorming sessions that invited everyone to voice their ideas. This would engender agency among the employees. For too long, Claire had blended into the background. Now, she envisioned herself at the forefront. But even as she embraced her ambition, she recalled the encounter with Pascal and his disdain for her title. Though his mockery cut deep, she recognized it as a challenge she needed to confront directly, not by sinking to pettiness, but through action. Suddenly, an idea clicked into place. Perhaps she could schedule a joint session with the healthcare and HR departments to discuss their current engagement levels and gather data for her proposal. Collaboration would not only enrich her findings, but also build alliances within the company, countering any resistance from those who sought to undermine her. Partnership. That's the key, she whispered to herself, jotting down the word with vigor. This would not be just her plan. It would encompass the collective intelligence of the company, demonstrating that change was not only necessary but a shared vision. But as Claire fortified her plan with newfound vitality, reality loomed again. The expectations from David were not merely about her proposal. It was also about herself, her competence as a leader. Did she possess the tenacity to push through criticism and backsliding? She recalled the words from the boardroom, how David's recognition flickered momentarily, hinting at buried potential. Yet potentials remained dormant unless coaxed forward with tenacity and resilience. How could she transform not only the company's landscape, but her own trajectory in the process? The stakes had never been clearer, but neither had the risks. Shaky ground lay ahead as she prepared to navigate not just the boardroom politics, but confront her inner demons, the remnants of self-doubt that had clung tightly to her for years. With a deep breath, she gathered her notes, pulse steadying. This was a pivotal moment, one that demanded both strategic thought and raw courage. She would need to confront Pascal next, not just to defend her ideas, but to stake her claim in the company's evolution. And soon as Claire left the meeting room, The sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the path ahead, not just a path to change within the corporation, but a journey towards self-affirmation. Yet another question lingered. Would her resilience garner the support needed, or would she face further obstacles that would threaten not only her plan, but her very position in the company? The reality began to dawn on her. She was not just launching an initiative, but was on the cusp of battling her own narrative, rewriting the script of who she was meant to be. And then the shadow of Pascal's skepticism hung heavy in the air as she caught sight of him approaching from the other end of the hall. The confrontation she had hoped to plan for had made its entrance uninvited and far too soon. The time had come to face not only him, but the unrelenting doubts lurking in her own psyche. Would she rise, or would she fall at the first hurdle? Claire steadied herself as Pascal closed the distance between them. His expression betrayed no amusement, only an air of deliberate condescension that set her nerves on edge. The flicker of uncertainty in her heart warred against the ironclad resolve she had been building. This was a man who thrived on chaos, and she refused to let him disrupt her focus. "Claire," he greeted, the word oozing with mockery. "Busy plotting your ascent?" She forced her lips into a neutral line, keeping her chin lifted. "I am preparing for our upcoming proposal discussions. I hope you're ready to contribute meaningfully this time." The words tasted sharper than she had intended, but the jab reassured her that she was still capable of standing her ground. His laughter rang through the hall, devoid of humor. "You think they'll listen to you? A rookie trying to maneuver the giants? Climbing that ladder is a lot harder than making pretty charts." He stepped closer, an unspoken challenge hanging in the air between them. Every instinct shouted at her to back down, to retreat into the safe shadows where she had spent too much time. But Claire forced herself to hold his gaze, the doubts swirling within her gradually morphing into determination. "I think it's time for change, Pascal. If we want to engage our employees effectively, we need everyone's input." He snorted, amusement flickering behind the veneer of his bravado. "Right. And you believe they'll just fall in line behind your little plans? You might not know it, but in this game, it's survival of the fittest." With the clock ticking louder in her mind, Claire's heartbeat synced to the moment, each pulse a reminder that this encounter was about more than preserving her dignity. It was about establishing her authority. And maybe it's time someone reminded you that teamwork doesn't equal weakness. It's about harnessing our collective strengths. Pascal's eyes narrowed, a flash of something, a mix of irritation and intrigue crossing his face. She sensed an opening, her mind racing to turn this moment into a channel for her purpose. "Look at what we could achieve together, instead of using your energy to undermine ideas that could uplift us all." But as she spoke, a thread of self-doubt tugged at her being. Was she truly capable of compelling a change amidst opposition? Pascal's reputation as a formidable gatekeeper of influence further intensified the pressure. "You think you can overcome me?" he taunted, and for the first time, there was an edge of vulnerability in his question that caught her off guard. "Yes," she answered evenly, surprising even herself with the resonance of her conviction. The warmth of possibility coursed through her, overshadowing the shadows of her insecurities. The unexpected confidence filled the space, and Claire realized that each word she had chosen served dual purposes. They defended her stance and, in doing so, fortified her resolve. She saw her worth manifesting not just in her words, but in her willingness to confront the naysayers in her path. As Pascal fell silent for a moment, Claire seized the opportunity, pressing on. "This company can't afford division. We need leadership that encourages collaboration, not one that thrives on intimidation. I demand your support." The moment hung weighty in the air, the silence crackling with pregnant tension. Claire could almost hear the gears shifting in his mind, process versus reaction wrestling for dominance. Had she shattered his confidence, or had she simply provoked the beast within? He finally stepped back, an inscrutable look crossing his face. "Consider yourself warned, Claire. This path 1TB is easy as you think. Be ready for whatever comes next." She exhaled slowly, every fiber of her being tense, but liberated. This was a pivotal clash, one that stretched far beyond the office rivalry and crashed headlong into her journey of growth. As Claire walked away with purpose, she felt a burgeoning sense of agency. She was no longer merely reacting to fear, but actively reshaping her narrative. However, an unsettling question flickered in her. mind. Was this confrontation the catalyst she needed, or merely the first tempest in a much larger storm? Her breath steadied as she made her way back to her workspace, a plan swirling with potential taking shape amidst the chaos. The looming reality remained her trial had only just begun, and the true test of her resolve was yet to manifest. What turbulence awaited her next? Would she tumble or soar? Claire settled into her workspace, the sounds of the office fading as the weight of her encounter with Pascal sank in. Adrenaline still coursed through her, bringing a heady mix of anxiety and excitement. She closed her eyes for a moment, recalling the confrontation. It was the most direct challenge she had ever posed to him, and, despite the evident risks, there was a power in her voice she hadn't recognized before. From that moment onward, she had to find a strategy. She understood that Pascal was not just any rival. He was a veteran in the corporate battlefield, with a reputation for tearing people down. However, it was equally clear that he held her in a different regard. His derision mingled with a certain respect that threw her off balance. Maybe the dynamics were shifting, she thought. Perhaps the time had come to leverage that shift to build coalitions within her team. Determination washed over her as she opened her laptop. Gathering data became her immediate priority. Research on employee engagement models and team dynamics filled her screen. She needed facts to support her theories, something more substantial than just her belief in the power of collaboration. Digging deeper into case studies and success stories, she pulled together a presentation that elucidated how other companies had thrived through addressing employee input. The ideas began to flow, her fingers dancing energetically over the keyboard. Each click surged her confidence further, knitting her plans with tangible goals. Through the day, Claire consulted colleagues, collecting insights and gauging their experiences. Much to her delight, several expressed frustration at Pascal's dominance and were eager for change, for someone to take the lead. With each conversation, Claire felt her conviction strengthen, realizing there were many waiting for a change, just like she was. Later that afternoon, she needed a moment to process her findings. Taking a walk outside, she let the air refresh her, clearing her mind of residual doubts. Watching the cityscape blurring by, she contemplated how easily Pascal dismissed her. But was it only hubris that made her see him as a formidable adversary? What if, instead, he served as a catalyst to push her into a new paradigm of leadership? Claire's thoughts tumbled around a central idea. She could play this to her advantage. Learning from his methods could turn her initial perception of fear into a strategy for resilience. With newfound resolve, she decided it was necessary to confront him again, not in anger, but to make him an ally. Her approach would require finesse. She envisioned a meeting where she could propose her ideas, accompanied by a coalition of her supportive colleagues. Stepping back into her office, Claire felt a sense of purpose wash over her. The risks of failure were still palpable, but even more inviting was the idea of future success. She knew her willingness to confront unpredictability would reshape her career and perhaps even her life. The stakes were about to rise. That evening, she sent a meeting request to Pascal, framing it as a discussion on the employee engagement initiative. Now, all she had to do was wait. As the hours ticked by, doubt built its nagging fingers around her heart again. What if he rejected her ideas outright? Would her hope to forge a connection dissolve under his scrutiny? The imbalance of power felt daunting, yet Claire's resilience surged again. This was her moment to confront not just Pascal, but the version of herself that often hesitated in the face of conflict. It was time to transform potential into actuality. As she settled back at her desk, her phone buzzed with an email notification. The subject line sent a ripple of anxiety through her. Meeting accepted. For better or worse, she was stepping into the lion's den, ready to negotiate her future. But was she truly prepared for the confrontation that lay ahead? And could she emerge not only intact but victorious? As the appointed day of the meeting dawned, Claire felt a mix of urgency and trepidation settle in her stomach. In those quiet morning moments before she arrived at the office, she allowed herself a deep breath. This was her moment, a turning point that could either propel her forward or set her back significantly. The low hum of the city outside her window felt both electric and foreboding, mirroring her anxious anticipation. Arriving at her workspace, she went over her presentation once more. Each slide had been crafted to not only present data, but to also tell a story her story. The narrative of transforming a stagnant team into a vibrant, cohesive unit was one she was passionate about. However, the underlying fear remained. Would Pascal view her ambitions as a threat? Or would he embrace the potential for growth she envisioned? With a determined stride, she headed to the conference room. The table was set as if for a confrontation, with formidable chairs and an open space that felt like a stage. When she entered, the air shifted slightly, charged with her nerves and the weight of her plans. Pascal was already seated, his steely gaze assessing her as she took a spot across from him. "Claire," he acknowledged, lips curling slightly. Was it a smirk or mere expectation? "I assume you've got something worthwhile to share." "Thank you for meeting with me, Pascal," she replied, projecting calmness despite the thudding in her chest. "I wanted to discuss how we can enhance employee engagement within our team. I believe there is a significant opportunity for improvement." Pascal leaned back, his demeanor shifting between amusement and curiosity. "Is that right? Go on." She launched into her presentation, each point meticulously outlined. The data she gathered painted a picture of disengagement, a problem all too prevalent in their office. As she navigated through employee sentiments and the tangible benefits of creativity and collaboration, she noticed Pascal's expression change, skepticism battling intrigue. "This is all insightful, but what's your real plan? How do you envision convincing the team to adopt any changes?" He interjected, his voice steady but lined with challenge. "By involving them in the process," she replied, keeping her tone measured. "We need buy-in from the ground up. I'm proposing a series of workshops where team members collaborate to generate ideas. This isn't just another initiative to enforce from above. It's about empowering our people." A long pause settled between them. Claire could almost hear the gears turning in Pascal's mind. The respect she had felt from him in their last encounter flickered in his eyes, replaced now by a calculated interest. Could he actually be considering her ideas? "I appreciate your passion, but you do realize that significant change often requires a firmer hand?" he countered, studying her reactions. "You're playing a dangerous game with employee sentiment." She felt a surge of confidence. "And you are aware, Pascal, that when employees feel valued, it results in higher retention rates and greater productivity? Our end goal is the same, a thriving company. I'm simply proposing a more inclusive approach." He paused, weighing her words, then leaned forward, an intensity shadowing his features. "You may have set the stage, Claire, but how will you handle opposition to the status quo? People resist change. They like comfort, even in stagnation." Claire took a moment, realizing that this was the crux of her challenge, not just with the team, but with him too. "I understand the risks, and that's why I plan to engage influencers within the team first. If I can garner their support, I believe the momentum will carry us forward." The challenge of Pascal's gaze didn't waver, yet a flicker of something unnameable passed between them. Perhaps it was recognition of a shared goal. Or maybe it was the dawning realization that he might not just be an obstacle, but an essential ally. Before she could voice any further points, he interrupted. "Let us see how far your enthusiasm can push this inner struggle for control. Set up those workshops. Prove your theory." "Are you saying yes?" Claire asked, incredulity creeping into her tone. "Not quite. Just consider it a test." Claire felt both exhilaration and apprehension surge through her. This was a challenge. But while she stared at her potential ally, a question loomed larger than before. How would she navigate this corporate chess game with someone as unpredictable as Pascal? As the meeting concluded, her mind whirled with strategies and contingencies. The stakes were elevated, and her resolve needed to be fortified. The battlefield was set, but the most daunting challenge still lay ahead. Could she truly harness this chaos, even with Pascal watching her every move, ready to strike at the slightest misstep? Fingers tracing the edge of her presentation, Claire turned her thoughts inward once more, steeling herself for the turbulence ahead as she exited the room. The challenge had escalated, but so had her determination, because now, the question wasn't just about Pascal. It was about everything she was willing to fight for within herself. Would victory feel as sweet as she hoped when the outcome hinged on someone so mercurial? With her heart racing, she stepped forward, ready to take on whatever challenges awaited her. Each decision would lead her deeper into uncharted territory, but one thing was certain. She was ready to confront Pascal again, armed with newfound clarity and purpose. Claire left the conference room with her mind racing. The challenge ahead of her felt daunting yet invigorating. As she stepped into the vibrant office space filled with buzzing conversations and flickering screens, the reality of her situation began to crystallize. The team had always been her priority, but now, she was faced with the monumental task of not just re-engaging them, but doing so while navigating Pascal's intricate web of corporate power dynamics. Sinking into her chair, Claire took a moment to regroup her thoughts. She had the chance to lead workshops, to spark a transformation, but could she rise to the occasion? The weight of Pascal's challenge hung over her. It wasn't merely about implementing a new strategy. It was about testing her own resilience and adaptability. She leaned back, arms crossed, and began to reflect on her next steps. The first decision was clear. She needed to identify who among her colleagues could serve as her allies. Influencers existed in every office, those with a strong voice who could sway opinions and generate excitement. Claire jotted down names, feeling a flicker of hope ignite within her. Nathan from marketing immediately came to mind. He was not only well-respected but also passionate about team dynamics. He would understand her vision. Claire grabbed her phone and shot him a text, suggesting they meet for coffee to discuss some ideas. The anticipation of that conversation soothed her anxious thoughts, and she realized how hungry she was for collaboration. Once the meeting was set, her mind shifted to logistics. The workshops had to feel inclusive, not like obligatory training sessions. They would need themes that sparked genuine interest. Claire envisioned brainstorming exercises that fostered creativity. Her heart raced as she pictured the team collaborating and building momentum towards engagement, the very initiative she had fought so hard to present. Yet lurking in the back of her mind was Pascal's wary caution. She needed to consider the potential pushback from those resistant to change. Would they label her as a disruptor? That thought began to gnaw at her. It dawned on her that this endeavor would test not only her professional abilities, but also her personal convictions. Keenly aware of her driving motivation, Claire thought back to her own experiences as an employee. What had inspired her? How could she extract those sentiments from her team? In that moment, she recognized the skill she'd harnessed throughout her career, empathy. She decided then that she would lead a preliminary session aimed simply at understanding the team's feelings and expectations. Establishing open lines of communication would be vital. As the day slipped into afternoon, her agenda began to take shape. With every slide she prepared for her initial session, Claire became more convinced that she was planting the seeds of transformation not just for her team, but for herself. She was in control of her narrative now, something that had eluded her in previous roles. But deep down, undeniable apprehension still lingered. Was her trust in her colleagues misguided? What if Pascal secretly undermined her efforts? The fear of failure loomed large, a reminder of the stakes she had to manage. Yet, Claire wasn't about to back down. Not after all the work she had put into this. As she left the office that evening, her heart buzzed with anticipation. She wasn't merely stepping into uncharted territory. She was embracing uncertainty. This was her chance to redefine not just the team but herself, too. Tomorrow would be the day she gathered her allies, and every interaction would count. Claire resolved to face each of them with honesty and courage. She'd need both to weather any storm that might arise. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows as she made her way home. Thoughts of possibilities filled the space around her. But, just as she began to settle into this newfound determination, an unsettling thought crept in. What if this alliance didn't hold? Was she prepared to face opposition, especially from within her own team? The moment had arrived to push the boundaries she once feared to approach. Each choice from here on out would be crucial. As she unlocked her front door, Claire felt everything intensify. Had she truly been prepared for this new battlefield? The next morning would prove pivotal in answering that question, and she was ready to find out just how far she could go. The morning sun streamed through the apartment window, casting a warm glow that ignited Claire's determination as she gathered her materials for the first workshop. Today was the day she would solidify her place within the company, not just as a maid who had stumbled upon a corporate scandal, but as a leader poised to advocate for change. She had spent weeks preparing for this moment, her resolve coalescing into clear objectives that could transform lives and futures. As she arrived at the office, she noticed the buzz among her colleagues was unusually vibrant. The initial meeting room was set up, inviting discussion and creativity. To Claire's relief, Nathan was already there, his energy infectious as he helped arrange the chairs into a circle, a subtle shift meant to foster openness and camaraderie. Other colleagues arrived, their curiosity piqued, and Claire could sense the momentum building. Stepping to the front, Claire scanned the faces in the room, each one a unique piece of the puzzle she had aimed to assemble. "Thank you for coming, everyone," she began, her voice steady, bolstered by their attention. "Today, I want us to focus on what engages us, how we can transform our workplace into an environment where everyone feels valued and heard." The session unfolded beautifully, with each participant eager to contribute their ideas and experiences. The energy pulsed, and Claire felt the magic of collaboration at work, each voice adding vital color to the tapestry of their team's potential. She guided the conversation towards an unveiling of the common frustrations and the aspirations that lay beneath, each moment giving rise to a deeper connection. As she drew on their collective insights, Claire became acutely aware of the shadows of doubt lingering in her own mind, remnants of skepticism from Pascal and others challenging her credibility. But amid the discussions, she found her footing, realizing that her conviction echoed across the room. She listened intently and facilitated, empowering her colleagues to engage openly and effectively. Then, when the discussion turned toward potential solutions, a collaborative vision for the future, the atmosphere shifted. Ideas flowed freely, a testament to the trust Claire had begun building with her team. They discussed the implementation of regular feedback systems, methods to foster accountability, and opportunities for professional development. This was it. The birth of their movement toward transformation. As the workshop concluded, Claire stood in front of a group animated by hope, a palpable shift evident in their demeanor. They were no longer simply colleagues. They had bonded over shared experiences and a common goal. "Thank you all for your input today. Your voices matter, and because of your passion, we can create something incredible here." The applause that followed sent ripples of warmth through her heart, an external affirmation of what she had long dreamed. But amidst that pride, Claire felt a wave of responsibility wash over her. She had the momentum now, but with Pascal's skepticism lurking, she knew she had to manifest real results to sustain their enthusiasm. That evening, Claire reflected on what she had accomplished with her colleagues. Each connection forged felt like stepping stones leading her toward a level of personal empowerment she had never achieved before. She had transformed from a reluctant maid with stories of oppression into a catalyst for positive change, now viewed as an innovator advocating for employee quality of life. However, her journey was far from over. The next day, she would present their ideas to David, who had witnessed the initial tremors of this tumultuous transformation. Would he recognize the merit in embracing this employee-centric approach? Would he support the ideas birthed from collective voices? Taking a deep breath, she prepared for her meeting with David with newfound confidence. As she entered his lavish office, she shook off the residual nerves from before. "David," she began, feeling the weight of the moment upon her. "I want to share what we've discussed in our workshops. We have a vision for enhancing employee engagement that could redefine our culture and ultimately boost productivity." David's interest was piqued, a flicker of curiosity igniting in his eyes. Claire outlined their proposals, illustrating their determination to weave a narrative of solidarity that empowered everyone, from the top brass to the staff on the floor. She presented evidence showcasing how companies with engaged workforces performed better, both financially and culturally. As Claire spoke, she maintained eye contact, conveying her resolve. "This is about sustaining our company's growth by cultivating a workforce that feels respected and valued. I believe this move will not just benefit morale, it will make us more competitive in the marketplace." A heavy silence hung between them as David processed her words. Claire felt her heart race. Would he take this opportunity to support change, or would his conservative instincts prevail? Finally, David leaned back in his chair, considering her words with a mixture of admiration and appraisal. "You've done well to engage the team, Claire. I admit, I was skeptical about this approach given our company's history. But if you're willing to spearhead this initiative and follow through, I see potential. Relief washed over her, and a triumphant smile broke through the tension. Thank you, David. I'll ensure we develop a comprehensive plan with measurable outcomes. We can show the board the value of this strategy. His nod signaled both acknowledgement and a new challenge. Her journey was evolving from introspection into action. Claire felt uplifted yet grounded, knowing she had a long road ahead towards implementation, but cerning each milestone she had crossed. As she left the office, a deep sense of satisfaction enveloped her. She had conquered her self-doubt, formed a dialogue with her colleagues, and earned David's trust as a proactive leader. Watching the cityscape blur by outside her window, Claire understood that each step had reshaped her identity into something she had always longed for, transforming her aspirations into reality. Now equipped with a shared vision and newfound confidence, she recognized that true change often started with one voice, hers. And in this moment of clarity, Claire understood that she was not just changing her workplace, she was changing her life. Feelings of empowerment surged through her as she prepared for the challenges ahead, knowing that the stakes were high but the potential for impact was even higher. And as Pascal's shadow loomed still somewhere in the background, Claire felt unyielding, a confident architect of her fate, ready to challenge both external forces and her past insecurities. The fight for her narrative had begun in earnest, and she was ready to pin each chapter further into success. Now, this is your moment. Don't wait even one more second to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Comment below with your reactions and theories about this conclusion, and share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. You need to support the channel if you appreciate stories of personal overcoming stories.